All right, welcome Maximilian Payu to the Nootralize Podcast once again.
Thank you, David. Thank you.
What have you been up to lately?
Well, mostly, last time we were on the podcast, I talked about like restructuring some of the database entities, and that's what I've been doing, kept doing, because apparently that was more complex than I initially thought. So I've been talking to our common friend Johan, and we discussed a little bit about how we should model it and how to implement it. And then yesterday I spent most of the day just hacking away at that. And this morning I eventually got something that's looking solid.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I've been spending a lot of time with this, and I'm surprised sort of that it's been taking so much time.
Right. But it's done now.
I think it's almost done. We tried to unify what a factor and a test measure is.
Mm-hmm.
And that complicated things. So now we've split them into two. And I think even initially that was your suggestion, that we would have two separate entities for them. But I argued that they are the same, but I feel now that they're not.
That may be the case. I don't really remember that.
Yeah. So, but this new model, I think it's more solid.
Good.
So I'm happy with that.
Mm-hmm. But you're going to continue to work a bit on that today as well?
Yeah, a tad bit. And then I think I have to merge in the data that you've been filling in to the database. Because I'm seeing now that there are some inconsistencies in what I have in my database. So I think it's old data.
Yeah, probably is. I've been going hard on the data entry for a while.
So. Yeah, but also there are some data missing. It seems like some measurements that I measurements from study groups that are not available in either factors or in test measurements. So at the moment, the application is not working for me because I'm missing some data.
Well, the application is working live for users. So
yeah.
I guess that it is indeed just your problem. The problem is that you are not in the actual data as it is in the most updated version of the database.
Yeah. And so I've been working a lot with that. And then was it the day before yesterday, we were working together on this article rendering feature.
Mm-hmm.
And we made some progress with that, but we're far from finished. So what's your idea? Because I think you'll have to drive that issue or that idea.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so the article feature idea is actually, for our listeners, just a methodological, systematic way of creating articles out of the data that we have gathered on nootropics and the studies that have been done on nootropics. So based on the studies that we have gathered, we will automatically create articles that we can publish on our blog and our Psychology Today blog and our medium.com blog, so that we can efficiently, and efficiency is one of our values here at Nootralize, so that we can efficiently market our findings really from this sort of quasi meta-analysis that we have done on the around 50 placebo-controlled studies on nootropics. Yes, right?
Yeah, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it may sound a little bit like let's say we publish 10 of those articles. If you read 10 of them in a row, it's gonna eventually start to sound a little bit monotonous. Like, okay, it's just data point, data point, data point. But if you just read one or two of them, I think you won't notice, or maybe perhaps you'll notice the pattern. But
yeah, I mean, they are primarily for the purpose of gaining outreach and gaining in the amount of readers on these different blogs that we have that will come into contact with our company. So it's like a first lead generating medium. It's not really content that is supposed to be educating for the reader, other than, sure, the data is educating, like the quality of the data is good. Like if you look at the effect sizes of a test for a specific nootropic, then you can get a good grasp of the effects of a nootropic as it has been found in studies. So it is good education on nootropics, but if you want the best education on nootropics, I don't really see any reason why for any nootropic article you shouldn't just go to the application itself and go to the nootropic page of the nootropic in question, because that is where you'll find the best information for each nootropic anyways. Yeah, so what I have in mind for these articles is that in a week or two, when essentially all the data has been entered from all of these studies that we haven't yet entered data for, then we will create a lot of articles automatically, and then we'll schedule them over maybe a year so that we have like an article a week coming out for 52 weeks. That's my plan.
I mean, I think if we can, each of those articles, if they, I mean, basically what we want is, like, if someone goes to Google and types in caffeine nootropic or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully we're gonna like rank pretty high with, or like somewhere in the top 5 with that article. Okay, I'm not sure where I'm going with this. I had some idea. No, but if we from those articles, like these rendered or these template articles, can get to some of the top positions of Google, like that, like even top 10, where I think it's a good investment.
Yeah,
it's pretty. I mean, it's cheap to put this together.
Right. Yeah, indeed. And I think that it is a good, like, it looks good, the investment, in regards to how that sort of investment has performed for us before. So when we did write these sort of articles before and publish them on Psychology Today, they did perform very well. Very well. We did
like templated articles.
Yeah, like the top 5 nootropics for mindfulness, for example.
Right. Yeah.
we did get a lot of use on Psychology Today, and therewith continuously over time through Google for those articles. So those generate like a lot of readers of the Psychology Today blog, and then some people going into the application as well, which is what we're looking for when we're creating these articles.
Oh yeah, I'm reading this 5 most science-backed cognitive enhancers for mindfulness now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I can totally see all the data points from our application.
Mm-hmm.
But like with the introduction text,
right,
and then just a list, I think it looks really solid.
Right.
It's a great article, basically.
Yeah, nice.
And people love these like top 5, top 10.
Yeah, indeed.
Like super easy articles to digest.
Yeah, and quite easy to create when you have the data as well.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh, that is so useful.
Yeah.
Damn.
Yeah.
Because I was a little bit like skeptical to this like templating content, but obviously it works. So.
Right. We gotta make it. You gotta make it work. Really. You gotta experiment with different articles, different titles, different topics, different layouts, and then when we find something that does work, we gotta use that thing. Like we gotta create one article for every nootropic for that specific sort of article.
I mean, it's so like when you're like 2 people working on an idea or business, you have to be like efficiency, as you said, is a value of ours. Like you have to find ways to cheat.
Right.
I'm not sure that's the right word, but
yeah,
like be like really efficient and perhaps cut these corners, I guess you could say, because you're not like sitting down and writing these articles per hand, each one of them. Perhaps you would increase that quality by, I don't know, 20% or 10%, or maybe it's less than that, who knows? But like if you can sustain some quality while templating and like generating this content, that's amazing for the efficiency. So I really like these ideas.
Yeah, I think that the quality in some instances is actually even better when you automate it and you don't include the human factor of error in the data display aspect of the article. So for example, if you want to include the number of participants in a study, coding that into an article that is automatically generated will reduce the error rate in comparison with letting a human go into a study or go into a database and find that number and then write it down in the article.
So you mean like quality of the correctness, or the correctness of?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I'm skeptical that the quality of the text, or like how alive it feels, should be improved from generating the text, so generating the content.
Right. Yeah, I can see that problem as well. I think that it isn't the most alive article that we will ever create, but on the other hand, we will have a lot more time to spend on writing those sorts of articles if we don't have to spend any time, barely any time.
So we can have these, so we can have these like generated, which do have good quality, but then also like that time that we're saved from not writing those manually, we can put into writing this like super high quality stuff.
Yeah.
Man, I'm in love with this.
Nice.
This efficiency.
Nice.
So really good work, really good ideas.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So hopefully in a couple of weeks, those will start coming out on the Nootralize blogs.
Mm. But we need to maybe like make a template. Perhaps we could do that in Figma. Like just draw out a template of what we would like to have.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what's the easiest approach, or like what's the most efficient approach to finishing the article templates.
Mm-hmm.
But we had some things that I need to like develop in the back end before we can generate all the data. But then there were some like formulations and stuff that I felt were unclear.
Okay.
I mean, we when we sat down, it was more like exploratory, exploring like how to do it.
Right.
It wasn't like you or I had a complete vision of it.
Yeah.
But it would be good to like draw out some I don't know, wireframe, something that. Mm-hmm. So next time we sit down, we can just code it. Or next time I sit down with it, I can just code it straight out.
Yeah. So, yeah, that is indeed something that we can do. Shall we move on from these articles then?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I just want something in the board that reminds me or you to pick up on this task.
Maybe we can enter an entry in the calendar instead.
Yeah, works for me.
So let's do that then. I mean, today is the day of me learning from you about coding.
Oh, right? Yeah. All right. Yeah.
So if I were to learn about the implementation of this sort of thing, like the behind the, like how you actually get the data into the article. So I'm thinking probably how you define like the model of it. I'm not sure if I'm using the right words. That's sort of what I'm trying to learn. Like I know that it is the code that is on the top of the file, like where you define what sort of data that you are looking to get into the article below through state.
I mean, I'm in no way like an expert of React or like I'm just using whatever tool I have available for this specific task, like rendering the articles. And yeah, since we've been writing the web application so far in React, I thought that okay, so the easiest way would probably be to just add another page where we can render out the articles for each nootropic. But okay, so I think you'll have to refine that question a little bit.
Yeah. I'm thinking that so maybe in an hour or 30 minutes or 20 minutes or maybe in the afternoon today, we will go into the code and look at that top part of the file that I'm referring to, and I'll be able to refine my question.
Yeah, sounds good. And yeah, like a super good goal would be that like you would like a good goal with that session would be that you can continue working on that yourself, maybe.
Yeah, that would indeed be awesome. Good. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so should we do that at around 2 o'clock? What we have an appointment in the calendar, right? No.
Oh, Seems like.
Oh wait, okay, so we had it it was yesterday. But for sure we can have it today.
Yeah. But I'm sure it's Tuesday, so like that was what we decided, isn't it?
I'm not sure, but
Really? Okay.
perhaps it was Mondays and Thursdays. But anyways, we can have it today. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
What time works for you?
I mean, after we've gone through what I'm going to do except for this today, why not just do it now?
Yeah, we could, for sure.
So, shall we take a side step into what I'm going to be doing today and then go back into the... Yeah. So, I have been investigating whether or not it is a viable option for us to conduct a systematic review and meta-analysis of these 50 placebo-controlled studies that we have currently included in our recommendation engine, and actually write it up as a systematic review so that scientists can evaluate the work that we've been doing through the same methods that they usually use to evaluate evidence. So
wait, can I back up, please?
Yeah.
Systematic review of all the nootropics. What did you say?
Yeah, that is part of what I'm investigating, whether it's a viable option to conduct a systematic review on all the nootropics and all of the tests to really answer the question, because in every systematic review, you should have at least one question that you're trying to answer. So the answer that we would have would be, do nootropic compounds enhance cognitive performance? And a secondary question may be, do we have enough evidence to answer this question? And
okay, so like, do they have an effect at all? That's the first question.
Yeah, indeed. So should there be any interest really in investigating these compounds anymore? Like what amount of resources should reasonably be allotted to this question in society? Because if it does indeed if we come to the conclusion that it does indeed, or many compounds or some compounds do indeed have significant impacts on cognitive performance, then it does make sense that researching for whom it has such effects and what the moderating variables are and how large the effects are, and in what contexts these effects occur. These sorts of questions would be follow-up questions to the conclusion that yes, nootropics in some instances do have cognitive enhancement effects if the conclusion is that. And then, of course, if we come to the conclusion that some nootropic compounds do have cognitive enhancement effects, and that we do, as a society, need more evidence regarding the moderating variables and in what contexts and what people these compounds work the best. If we do need more evidence regarding that, then that, of course, opens up the question, how should we gather this evidence? Because clearly, at least in my view, we do not have enough evidence. And that points to a systematic flaw in how we gather evidence, in my view, which leads me to believe that internet-based experiments are needed. They are needed. Like we need to conduct internet-based experiments to increase the number of participants that can be included in studies so that we can gather more evidence to be able to figure out which variables are responsible for the effects of nootropic compounds so that we can help people use them safely and effectively as well.
I mean, it sort of surprises me, or I remember when we started, or like looking at the studies that we have gathered so far, I was surprised to see that there are so few participants in each of the studies. Like some studies can have like 12 participants or 20 or 30. I thought it was gonna be like in the thousands initially. But I'm not sure if that, like having so many participants would even add to the like the confidence that it is actually effective for the entire population, or if it's a lack of resources
I think
that has limited like the scientists.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a combination of both. So scientists, sure, if they would have like free in regards to time, money, and other resources, availability of participants, then they would gather like thousands of participants because then they could make very detailed claims regarding moderating variables, really. So they could see, for example, does age contribute to the effects of this compound? Does physical activity level contribute to the effects of this compound? But now that it isn't the case that participants are free to, like, it's not super easy to gather participants for a study. It can be done if you have a very specific research question and have a very specific protocol for conducting your research, because then you will get the funding from interested parties, which could be universities or companies, for example. But to get a large number of participants into an experimental study, you would need the cost of such a study. You need the cost of acquiring these participants or getting these participants into the study to be very much reduced for it to be a sustainable equation. And I think that internet really is the solution to this, because then if people are motivated themselves to go into the study because they can get information about themselves as well, then it is very much cheaper for the study creators, which would, in the case of our logging feature, be us, Nootralize, to conduct a study with a large number of participants. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
I think it does.
Good. So the systematic review and meta-analysis of these placebo-controlled trials that we have gathered data on is what I'm pondering whether or not it is a viable option to do. Should we even try to conduct a systematic review and meta-analyses on these studies.
So
And
what would we like gathering all the evidence from all of the studies that we have in our database? Is there evidence enough, like across all of those nootropics, all of those studies? Is there evidence at all that they are effective? So like the results from all of those studies would not be inconclusive, because I've seen a lot of studies where it seems like the results are inconclusive.
right.
Like,
yeah. And I think that if we were to do such a study that I'm proposing, such a systematic review that I'm proposing, we would indeed not be able to say much more, except for maybe like Jacob Monieri, where we have like 9 studies. But in most cases, for most nootropics, we wouldn't be able to say much about the efficacy of that specific nootropic. Instead, we would have adequate amount of evidence to suggest or answer really the question, are there some nootropics that enhance cognitive performance for some people in some situations? And if that is the case, which I suspect, I have a hypothesis that is the case, then that would mean that there is a need for more research on the topic and a need for a large number of participants study on the different nootropics in different contexts and different people, maybe even in combination with other nootropics, to see how we can get them to work as efficiently as possible.
I'm curious if like the companies that sell or produce nootropics, are they at all interested in finding out what the actual effects are? Like, do they spend money on conducting research?
Yeah, they do. I've seen some studies.
Like MindLab Pro, or I'm not sure, Mind Nutrition, iHerb, I mean, even the shops.
Yeah, I haven't seen any shops doing that. I do have recollection in my mind of some companies producing certain extracts of nootropics, such as like a specific saffron extract called Afron, or a specific lemon balm extract called Blueness. These are examples of specific extracts of specific nootropics where the company, who I think have patents in all of these cases, conduct studies on the compounds to see if they enhance cognitive performance. I think that is the case, yeah.
Okay. And they have published those, and because they have, I assume they found like conclusive results.
I mean, this certainly varies a lot depending on which study and which company you're looking at. So it's really hard to answer that question in general.
I'm reading on MindLab Pro's website right now.
I mean, they reference some human placebo-controlled studies, I think, but mostly they reference like the bioavailability of their compounds and like pharmacokinetics and dynamics of their compounds and why their specific variant of the nootropic in question, or the nootropic substance in question, is the best. So they are trying to, for example, in the case of acetylcholine, argue that cognizin is an important, like it's important that you take this specific nootropic compound, cognizin, because it has been tested in placebo-controlled trials. And then they argue that this may be because it has a better bioavailability, for example.
Mm-hmm.
So MindLab Pro, I don't think so, at least, have not done a placebo-controlled trial on their entire stack.
That's kind of interesting. Why shouldn't they want to find out?
Yeah, they should.
How effective it really is. I mean, people are paying a lot of money for these compounds or these products, so why shouldn't they actually?
I know that one company called HVMN or Human. They did conduct a study on their caffeine and some other compound stack, but it actually performed worse than caffeine. Okay. Yeah, I don't remember specifically what was in the HVMN stack, but they compared a stack that they had created to caffeine, I think, and it actually performed worse than caffeine.
So they quit selling that? What?
They have updated their product, yeah.
Okay.
So it's another
that I like.
Set of ingredients. Yeah.
I support that.
Yeah.
On MindLab Pro, they have on their website a page called reviews, and it's like clinical neuropsychologist who's talking in some video, and chess grandmaster, a professional base jumper, professional poker player. It's just stories, I guess.
Right.
It's not very scientific.
Right. It's probably mostly for marketing purposes.
Yeah.
But the questions that do arise when I ponder whether or not to conduct a systematic review on the 50 placebo-controlled trials that we have collected is, for example, should we or I write this systematic review? Would it actually be good for our brand to have written a systematic review by someone who doesn't have a title? Because essentially, I have never seen a systematic review or even a trial, like a clinical trial, by someone who doesn't have a scientific education of at least 3 years. And I'm not sure what the public perception of such a study would be. Would it be that, would it be good for us even if we did have that study?
Have we published any material on systematic reviews before, content?
If we have.
Yeah.
No, they are quite extensive, and every part of the process of how you conduct your search, how you extract the data from the study, every step of the process has to be very carefully completed so that you adhere to the scientific standards and so that you avoid bias and different methodological problems that could arise. So no, we have not done that because that would really create it will require a lot of time.
So, okay, I'm not sure if you answered the question that I was actually thinking about, but I was more thinking about, have you published any or talked about how to conduct a systematic review?
Whether we have, like you and me and Yuan, so Nootralize, whether we have.
No, I was thinking in like content.
Yeah, so whether we have created content.
Like where we talk about how systematic reviews are conducted.
Well, the closest to that would be How Nootralize Research's Nootropics article, which is sort of what I'm looking to replace, because that is beginning to become outdated. And if we could replace it with a systematic review, then I think that would be, like, by every parameter as regards scientificness, I think it's a boost. Like, it's a good thing that we would conduct a systematic review where we would take into consideration all of the methodological questions that one should take into consideration to really conduct a systematic review of the literature.
Yeah, so reason why I'm asking is, like, do we even, or we could build credibility by first, like, researching, okay, what is a scientific review? How do you conduct it? Like, what are the methods? And how to do it, like, properly.
Right.
And then once we have figured that out and perhaps even published that article, then we can go on to actually do the review and then refer back to our article where we explain, like, here, look, we've done the research on how to do the review, and now we actually apply that knowledge.
Yeah, I mean, we could do that. And yeah, maybe we should. I do, however, think that it's not really our target. I mean, maybe.
I mean, it wouldn't be useful for most of our readers, I think, but it would give us credibility if we show that, look, we published this systematic review, and but we also published this, or we, like, in some way we can show that we've done our research.
Yeah. Right.
But I'm not sure if that's the, like, most efficient way of doing it either. So
no, I think that we actually could prove that just by doing the systematic review correctly.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, if we don't know how to do the systematic review by now, and we're gonna figure that out, or you're gonna figure that out, we are gonna figure that out, then we might as well, like, publish, like, use that knowledge that we're gathering to publish an article. I mean, if it's not too time consuming.
We could do that. It would require some time. And I do think that there are resources out there. Like, when I've been, as I said, pondering for the last day or so whether or not we should be doing this, I've been also going into Google and searching for different resources to guide me in how to conduct a systematic review and meta-analysis. And there are good resources online.
Okay. Yeah. So then I guess we can just refer to those then.
Yeah, exactly.
Look, this guy knows how to do it. We followed his guide, or
and usually
guidelines.
Actually it's not even guys that are doing this. It's actually, like, corporations like Cochrane, like it's a large non-for-profit that have a lot of systematic reviews that are evidence-based and trusted in the field. And they have a good guide on how to conduct systematic reviews, for example.
Mm.
So yeah, we could for sure reference different resources on how to conduct a systematic review if we decide to create this systematic review. And then let's just hope that the minds of the scientists and the academics, I guess, are open enough to recognize that the methodological quality of what we have been doing is the same as that which the same, or if it is not the same, we will have written about our methodological flaws just as any scientist would in the methods section of our systematic review.
Mm.
So yeah, if
But
we
does the like the sole fact that you don't have a title, does that cut into your credibility so much that it does matter?
I mean, that's what I have not been able to find an answer to, because I've never seen anyone publish systematic review without a title.
Okay, yeah. Tricky.
Yeah. I mean, if you compare a systematic review to what we would be doing otherwise, which would be like picking aspects of the systematic review process and not doing it completely systematically. So for example, when we search for the studies that we're going to include in our systematic review and eventually also in our recommendation engine in the application, when we do this search for the studies, what we've done so far is that we've gone to examine.com and selfhack.com, which then have, like, they are secondary sources to the primary sources of, for example, PubMed and Sage, for example, Cochrane. Like, there are primary sources where the original study is published. And these secondary sources, which are selfhack.com and examine.com, are the ones that we have been going into and find, like, that's where we have found the studies that we have so far included, because we believe that they have both the incentive and the resources to find the studies that are investigating the effects of these compounds on cognitive performance. But we may want to use another method if we want to publish this systematic review. So we may want to be doing keyword search in the actual databases, like in the actual primary sources. Like, we want to go into PubMed and maybe if we want to pay for example, Cochrane or Embase, which are large databases that have studies that we may want to include. So we may want to do that if we are going to conduct a systematic review. So really what we are deciding here is, should we increase the methodological quality of our study selection, data extraction, and data analysis, or statistical analysis of the data? Should we increase the quality of all those steps of the methodology of our answering the question, do nootropics, or does a specific nootropic work for cognitive enhancement.
Can you rephrase that last part?
Sure. So what we are going to be doing when we go into the systematic review process, if we choose to do that, you with me?
Yeah.
Is that we will be using a more systematic method for finding studies, extracting data, possibly, and before extracting the data, actually excluding and including studies. And also after extracting the data from these studies that we have included, we will be analyzing the data, and we will be analyzing the quality of the data. And all of these steps, we will be doing it in a more systematic manner if we conduct a systematic review.
Right.
So the question, if we disregard the aspect that is credibility and authority as regards like academic titles, we disregard that aspect of it. It is a more scientific process to conduct a systematic review and to follow all the guidelines that are included in conducting a systematic review than what we have done so far, which is why I think that we should probably conduct a systematic review and meta-analyses of these nootropic studies.
I mean, our recommendation engine is, in a way, basically like systematically reviewing studies.
Mm-hmm.
So what I mean, we have both agreed that like the solution we have, or in every iteration, we know there are flaws, and we continuously want to improve it.
Right.
And perhaps this is like the next step towards making it solid, more solid.
Yeah.
So.
Right.
Seems to me like it's worth spending a lot of time on.
Yeah, and I do think that overall would probably increase the credibility of what we have done as well, like as regards analyzing studies. If we actually publish a paper, clearly state exactly what we have done, how we did it. So for example, in our data gathering process, we want to state clearly that we hire someone who doesn't have like any expertise except for a couple of hours of training, and that we trained him on how to extract data and enter it into an equation which is available online for everyone to see. Then we can reference psychometrica.de or /effect size or .html. And then people can go into that link and see that, okay, this is the equation that they've used, and then they can reproduce it, and then we increase the transparency and authenticity of what we're doing. So if we conduct this systematic review and show everyone exactly what we've done and increase this transparency and authenticity, then I believe that it will indeed, and in comparison with what we have done now, increase our credibility.
I wonder if, like, because I mentioned earlier that perhaps I think at some point we need to get in touch with like PhDs or professors at like who actually do these studies. I don't know, maybe perhaps even companies, to like have some collaboration with them. And one part of that would be just to like we put the let's say we figure out, or like we try to figure out how to make this, to do these systematic reviews, or how we should do our next iteration of the recommendation engine, how that is implemented, that we can just like get some feedback on that.
Right. Yeah, I mean, feedback is always good. I do, however, think that there is a lot of good information available online.
Yeah, so, I mean, for sure, I'm not refuting that, but it would be like reassuring for us to, like, after we've done our research and like put together these things, we can just have it reviewed. Like, I'm not saying that we should work like tightly together with someone who knows this stuff. We can put it together ourselves, but then just have it reviewed.
Yeah, exactly. And we may achieve that if we conduct this systematic review and do it in a very scientific manner. Then we may be able to publish it in a journal, and then they will have scientifically trained editors of that journal that go through our article, which, if they decide to accept it, would be the ultimate proof that what we have done is scientifically accurate.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
But it would be, yeah, I'm just thinking it would be like, if this, like, not having a title attached to the author of the article, if that turns out to be like an issue, then just having someone who has reviewed it for us, we can put their name on there, and that solves the issue. That would be nice. Like, that would be payoff enough.
Yes. However, there are guidelines for who to include in the authorship of a systematic review, like who to include under the authors list.
Right. So there are limits to who you can put on there. Right.
So the authors have to be included in, like, they have to be involved to quite a significant extent in 4 different steps of the process. And that entails that if we are gonna include an author who has a title and do it correctly, then we would have to work with them from the start, or at least from an early stage, and they'd have to work quite a bit with us.
Okay. Quite a bit. Do we know the limits of that?
Yeah, I can read the important parts of the article here.
Because, I mean, it is...
Okay, should I read it?
Yeah, okay, go on.
So the International Committee of Medical Journal Editors have released guidelines for who should be included in the author list. And this is what they recommend. Substantial contributions to the conception or design of the work, or the acquisition, analysis, or interpretation of data for the work. That is one requirement for whether or not a person should be included in the author list. So essentially, they should have substantial contributions to how the work is designed or conceived of.
Designed. I mean, that's one part of it, and that was perhaps the most important part I was referring to when I was, just like the design of the systematic review. Let's say someone could like give us feedback on that, and that would like contribute to the design for sure.
Yeah. They should also draft the work or revise it critically for important intellectual content, and be involved in the final approval of the version to be published, and agree to be accountable for all aspects of the work in ensuring that questions related to the accuracy or integrity of any parts of the work are appropriately investigated and resolved. So essentially, these three parts mean that they should be involved in actually writing the systematic review as well.
Okay.
And they should be involved in approving the systematic review, and they should be involved in the follow-up. So essentially answering questions that maybe scientists or maybe readers who aren't scientists, so people who read the systematic review and have questions or maybe even question the methodology, they should get their answers, and the methodological flaws should be resolved if there are any.
Okay, so that's a bigger issue.
It's a bigger issue.
Yeah.
Yeah. So essentially, substantial contributions are needed from a person for them to be considered an author.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we have a choice between conducting a systematic review or not conducting a systematic review. And as I see it, it's really a question of whether we are willing to invest the time to learn about how to do it and to actually do it in order to get a more scientific work, a more scientific recommendation engine and systematic review. Really, like, we're going to increase the scientificness of what we have achieved as regards compiling studies if we do this. So is that worth my estimate would be that this would take 2 weeks of full, like maybe 12 hours a day of work. So 14 days times 12 hours to 3 months of 12 hours per day work from me. And then quite a bit of contributions, maybe 10 to 20 days of contributions of 10 to 12 hour days for me as well. That's my estimation of what it would take to conduct a good systematic review.
So I guess that begs the question, so what are the alternatives? What can we spend more time on? What is more efficient to actually create something that will help people?
Yeah. And for you, I think that, or for Nootralize, I think that would be the logging feature. And that is, of course, something that you have better efficiency in creating right now. Like, you're the developer in the company. So it will be more efficient for the company if you spend your time there, because it's a very important feature for people. It will be, and for Nootralize it is. So that is the alternative for you. The alternative for me would really be to do this, like conduct science, or rather compile the studies and display the studies and communicate the information scientifically to our readers and listeners of our content efficiently. So the alternative for me would be to find another way to efficiently communicate the science in nootropics. So what do you say, Maximilian?
What? Sorry, what?
What do you say? How are we gonna go forward with this?
It's not easy to answer.
That's for sure.
I'm always talking about like verify. We have to verify the idea. We have to verify that this is actually useful to people.
Yeah.
How can we, if we use that as, if you use that as a measurement, does that give us any more information on what to do, what to spend our time on? I mean, I believe that I believe I have my work cut out for the coming month or two at least. But is that clear? Is that also clear for you what you need to spend your time on?
I don't think it is. I think it's quite clear that, it's quite clear that there are quite a few large tasks that I could choose to spend my time on, and that would have a varying, like some tasks would have a larger benefit for our users eventually, and some tasks would have comparatively less of a positive impact on the user experience of the Nootralize application and the learnings and lessons that people can take away from it. So it's not as clear for me exactly what I should spend my time on. But of course, increasing the data quality and the scientific methodology is pretty much on top of that list. And conducting a systematic review is, in my opinion, the best way of doing what we have already been doing with these 50 placebo-controlled studies, trials. And so if we were to do this, conduct a systematic review, I think that would be probably the most efficient way for me to spend my time during the coming weeks to months.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you think about doing a little bit of exploration?
As regards
to what could be the most efficient way of spending your time, like just take a day or two or a day, a few hours perhaps, to really just come up with creative ideas on how to spend the time.
Yeah, I mean, I have been doing that.
Okay.
And this is sort of the conclusion. Like, alternative ways for me to do it would be to focus, like spend some part of the time on doing this, like improving the data quality and this like the methodology of how we compile studies and conduct the quasi-systematic review. And some other things I could then, through the saving of time, also do, which would be like creating useful features for the users through gathering a lot of data on, for example, the possibly toxicology, but also pharmacokinetics of different nootropics, which would enable the user to figure out how much of a compound is toxic and what that toxic effect is. So, for example, we could show on the caffeine page that you probably don't want to be using 3 grams of caffeine, because then you can have these very dangerous adverse effects, maybe even death. So I could improve the information that is displayed on nootropic pages for users so that they can have a better basis for their decision making on how to use these nootropics. So there are some other things that I could be doing, but they would also take quite a bit of time. And I think that doing this systematic review would probably be the best way to move forward at this point.
So what about the video content that we were talking about a little bit a few days ago?
Yeah, we could do that as well. That's indeed another option.
I'm not saying that we need to spend 100% of our time focused on one task at a time.
Yeah.
Like if we can reason about like this thing we're doing here is something that we can capitalize on in 2 months, but this what we're doing here, like 50% of that goes into long-term results, 50% goes into short-term results. Or maybe not even short-term results, like both are long-term results, but one of them like is different kind of work.
Yeah.
And we see value in both of them. Perhaps one is more risk reward ratios are different.
Yeah. I feel you and what you're saying.
Because we've had a lot of success with the articles published through Psychology Today. So we know that's a good channel of grabbing attention.
Right.
Once we want to, let's say we want to verify the logging feature once that is published, then we could publish a few articles, and that would probably give us some traffic through the application.
Do you know what I think that we should be doing?
Let me know.
I'll let you know. I think that we should try to conduct a systematic review and see where, when I try to do this, if I come to a point, an obstacle, then I'll let you know, and we'll talk about it, and we'll reevaluate, and we'll maybe conduct a quasi-systematic review, which would mean that it would have certain aspects of a systematic review and not every aspect. So, for example, let's say that we don't have all the expertise, all the software packages, and all the data that is required to assess the publication bias for these studies in the systematic review that we're going to conduct. Then we may want to avoid doing that because it's going to take us a lot of time to acquire those resources so that we could conduct a systematic review. So if we have this mindset to conducting this systematic review, that we will not be accepting huge blow-ups of time needed to spend on a specific aspect of the systematic review. Instead, we will continue with the other aspects of the systematic review, and in that...
Hello?
Hello? Hello? Now,
I'm not sure how my internet is working right now.
do you hear me now?
Hello?
Hello?
Sort of.
Okay. Do you hear me now?
There's a huge delay.
That sucks. Do you hear me?
Yeah, I do hear you.
Okay, good.
Okay, we're back.
Yeah, we're back. So,
You were talking about blow up of time.
yeah, we don't want that to happen, of course. Like I do have other things that I could be doing with my time. So I don't want to be spending more time than necessary on the systematic review. So if we do realize that we don't have the adequate expertise, software packages, data, etc., the resources that we need for a specific aspect of the systematic review, such as assessing the publication bias of the review or the studies in the review, which is a step in the systematic review of randomized controlled trials or placebo-controlled trials. Like when you do a meta-analysis and systematic review of placebo-controlled trials, for example, then you should assess the publication bias, the probable publication bias. You should use a statistical analysis to analyze the effect sizes and the sample sizes of the different studies to see, is it probable that there is a publication bias going on here? Okay, so that is a step in a systematic review. So if we realize that, for example, this step of assessing publication bias takes a lot of time for us, will take a lot of time. We'll have the mindset of constantly trying to look in the future and see how long will this take. If we realize that a certain step of the process will be taking a lot of time, then we will skip that step and write in that part of the meta-analysis that we basically didn't have the resources to conduct this step of the process. So then we can, instead of having the 2 weeks to 3 months estimate I think I laid out earlier, we could have maybe 2 weeks to a month as the estimate for how long this will take. And that would mean, didn't you say that you have 1 to 2 months of work laid out for you?
Yeah, something like that.
So that would mean that I'd also be ready to respond and adapt to the users coming into the Nootralize app and the login feature and be ready to answer their questions, I guess, in content, for example, and also to create features of the application that they request.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
I think we're good as long as, we are constantly like reevaluating what should we be spending time on right now. And I think just continuing with that approach, we will be good.
Yeah.
We can't do better than going in the course of action, which we think is right at the moment. So,
yeah, exactly.
And we trust each other to like take the best decisions.
Definitely, yeah. And we also trust each other. At least I trust you to do it, and I trust myself to do it as well, to let the other person know, such as, for example, what I've been doing here by asking you, do you think it's the right thing to do to conduct a systematic review when we are uncertain? Yeah.
So let's, no further questions, I guess.
Nice. So I'll be looking into, on a deeper level, the different steps of the systematic review process, and I'll be starting to, in a more formal manner, define the question that we're looking to answer with our systematic review, which roughly will be: do nootropics enhance cognitive performance? So I'll be creating the protocol for the systematic review to start with. That is the first step. Yeah. So that is together. Well, we have all of this data now, right? That we have in our studies, in the application, in our database. And I've been working for a couple of weeks on entering this data, right? And now that we may want to change the methodology by which we include or exclude studies and by which we find studies, from finding them in cellpack.com and examine.com to finding them in the primary sources such as PubMed. And we also want to refine our inclusion and exclusion criteria so that they are perfectly logical and so that they are exactly what we want them to be, to reflect users that will be using the Nootralize application, which are going to be primarily healthy users, so non-diseased people, and also we'll have to define every step of the, or rather every criteria as regards exclusion and inclusion of studies and data. So I'll be refining the protocol for the study, because that is the first step of a systematic review. But I've been, as I said, collecting data, right? I've been looking into these studies that I've found via cellpack.com and examine.com. So collecting the effect sizes for these studies, right? That's something that I've been doing for like a week or so in the past. And I think that I'll be putting that on hold until we have defined the inclusion criteria, the exclusion criteria, and also the keyword search terms for which we'll be searching the databases, the primary databases. And my expectation is that we will be including maybe 95% of the studies that we've already included, if not all of them, because our inclusion criteria will not change all that much. Like, our inclusion criteria will be that we have placebo-controlled studies and we have healthy human participants, right?
Yep.
And then we'll also be excluding maybe per definition in the inclusion criteria that we have healthy human participants, but we'll be excluding people who have diseases, for example, which is a common area of research. So I think that because our inclusion and exclusion criteria won't change all that much, we will be having possibly every single one of the studies that are included currently in the recommendation engine and in the database, they will be included in the systematic review as well, right?
Right.
But I am pondering whether or not we should have the studies or there will be studies that aren't included, I think, in the systematic review, that aren't included so far in our database, because we will be conducting a more rigorous database search process. So maybe there will be other studies. You know, we have assumed that Cellpact and Examine have done thorough research and searched these databases as well, right?
Yeah.
But maybe we will find studies that they haven't included. So
do they have the exact same inclusion criteria?
Well, I don't think that they have any inclusion criteria per se, because maybe they do in their research processes, but like they are trying to find every piece of evidence, especially as regards human effects. And in some cases for those websites as well, they want evidence on animals and in lab petri dishes, so cell studies essentially. Yes, they have different inclusion criteria, I guess one could say then. But I'm not sure that, and they include studies on deceased people as well. So, for example, people with cognitive impairing diseases such as ADHD or Alzheimer's, for example. So they include a lot more studies than what we have included, because we are only looking to see if nootropics work in healthy human participants. So, because we may include more studies, because we are going to go to the primary sources, the databases, not examine.com and subpack.com. We will, or I will, put the data entry on hold until I've defined the protocol, which will include the keyword search definition. So how we will be searching these databases for these studies. So what I'm saying is that for the next week or so, I won't be entering any new data, I think, until I have created this protocol and search criteria definition.
Okay. So, question, why, like, since we have in our recommendation engine, a user can search for recommendation based on that they want to improve their mood, let's say. Why, in that case, shouldn't we? I mean, I can see that it's easier to, like, if we have said that we only want healthy human placebo-controlled studies, it's easy to know whether we should include or exclude a study. But let's say someone wants to improve their mood, wouldn't it help if we had available data on depressed people, like people that are depressed?
Maybe it may have some importance. However,
and like people with ADHD, if someone is looking to improve their attention span, let's say.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that if someone is looking to improve their mood or to improve their attention, they don't have perfect mood or attention, or else there wouldn't be any need to improve it, or any perceived need, assuming that the perception that there is something to improve is correct. But the practical aspect of gathering all of these studies is really what's important, because it would take a lot more time for us to gather these studies and to weigh them correctly, because we wouldn't want to weigh them as highly as studies on healthy human participants, because that is better evidence for trying to figure out if a nootropic compound works for example, attention or mood in a healthy human. So it's about time, really. Yeah.
Yep. Should we try to wrap this up?
Yeah.
Because I'm feeling my cognitive performance and
energy, maybe.
Sorry?
Energy levels, maybe.
Yeah, energy is plummeting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Maybe time for some lunch.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So let's postpone the
teaching lesson.
Teaching lesson.
Teaching lesson. Yeah.
Yeah. We both understand what we mean.
Yeah.
Let's postpone that to maybe after lunch.
Yeah, sounds good.
Mm-hmm. So thank you everybody for listening to this episode of the Nootralize Podcast, and we will be back here soon. So have a good time until then. Bye.
Bye.